nice to also, if you look, go through it once, listen to it. Oh, there's more. I want more details.
Yeah, that's
maybe
true.
go back
Like,
and find listen to it again.
Yeah, I started doing that recently. I went back to episode 0, like the day I was getting ready to fly out. Hearing the 6809 discussion again, it made more sense with 6 months' time to absorb everything. The first time you hear it, it's like it's like Teflon, and but over time it starts to sink in,
And it made it really easy for me to go back. My wife wouldn't be interested in all the CoCo stuff, but she does listen to my part of the podcast, which is an interview, and she enjoyed that. But she wouldn't want to listen to the rest of it, so I can forward to that point.
Yeah.
So,
Your
so
interview
that's
was
a very
great too.
important
I
part.
enjoyed your interview both with the podcast and with us, and thank you for doing that, John Strong. But so, what does it take to be a podcaster? Are there any rules or regulations or governance for this, or?
Well,
You have to like talking.
there's certainly, you have to register with the government and pay a tax. No. It's not that difficult, like I say, you have to produce an MP3 player and, or an MP3 file, which, is a little bit of a philosophical issue for me due to some patent stuff. But,
Okay.
get beyond that. You have to be able to produce MP3 files. If you want to be listed on iTunes, which you probably do, they have some, they have a requirement for, your video or your
Cover art.
Yeah, your cover art. You need to declare your content to your style or whatever. Like if you're an adult themed podcast or versus a family friendly whatever. So there's some stuff. Apple has a bunch of custom tags to put in your RSS feed that are, I don't know even where they're defined, but if you use a service like Libsyn, they'll generate the feed information for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you want to control your own feed, you have to be aware of those tags and put them in and update them. It's a technical issue, But
Now, is that for searching in iTunes, if you search CoCo or something?
well, just to even get through their listing or whatever, that's like, just because you have an RSS feed that's valid doesn't mean that iTunes will process it in a valid way. So you have to kind of, they have like RSS Plus or whatever for Apple. But that's the thing, you need an RSS feed is fundamentally what you need. That's what the podcatchers use, whether it's iTunes or something else. If you want people to listen, you have to be available through the services that people want to use. So that's iTunes. There's this Google Play Music that has just finally come out and
It's working now.
has podcasts now.
Stitcher.
There is Stitcher. Who uses Stitcher? Anybody use Stitcher? Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
using it just because.
So have you gone
As soon
back
as I started hearing
and
it, I
made
got
all of
3
your
listens.
old episodes available on Google Play?
They're all available. It just picks up the RSS feed.
Once
so
Google
everything's
knows
in
about
there.
the RSS feed, add it.
Yeah, you don't really do an individual feed per episode. You just have one feed that you add each episode to as you go along. So anything that picks up the feed will have all the episodes, basically.
Is that including the show notes as well?
Well, so that's the thing. That's part of the RSS stuff. You can embed show notes in the feed, but you only get so much space, and then some software actually chokes if the overall feed gets too big. So we used to try to put some of the show notes when they were smaller. We'd try to embed the show notes in there. That never worked very well anyway because trying to put HTML tags inside of HTML, got to be properly escaped and all that sort of stuff. So now all we do is put a URL in that points to where the actual notes are. And so if you look in the associated links or whatever with in the feeds, you'll just see a URL that points out to cococrew.org, so you can just get the notes that way. And like I said, they're all maintained as HTML, even when we pass it back and forth, it's all HTML. But yeah, there is a little bit of a technical thing, but if you wanted to start your own podcast, I would advise you go to Libsyn or a similar service, get their minimum subscription. One of the reasons why we moved away from Libsyn is that we had a $5 a month subscription. You can pay more for a little bit better service, but for $5 a month, you can upload 50 meg a month. And it resets every month, so you can do a 50 meg next month, and 50 meg the next month, and forever. But, you know, any given month, you can only do 50 meg, and you can't skip a month and do 200 meg, or do 100 meg either. And so 50 meg is enough for an hour episode, maybe, right?
It kept us too short.
It kept us a little short. Maybe that's not so bad for discipline-wise, especially if you haven't developed what you're gonna talk about. Some people get on and just talk too much or whatever, so maybe that's not so bad. But you, like I said, there are services that are out there where you just basically upload your MP3 file, and then that's it. They'll even do the feed stuff. There are even services, I don't know if Libsyn's one of them, maybe it is. There are services that basically will take care of talking to Apple for iTunes or whatever, so you don't really have to do anything except upload your MP3 file, and that's it, you're a podcaster. So that's not too bad. Well, so what about YouTube? Other than YouTube itself, are there any listing services or anything like that that you need to deal with?
I don't have to do, the good thing about YouTube is anybody can upload anything they want.
Yeah.
But it can also be the bad thing about YouTube as well.
Right.
And it automatically gets linked through Google Plus too, because YouTube's owned by Google, so.
Yeah, if you're interested in doing YouTube, it would make sense to have a Google Plus account. YouTube will automatically post to Google Plus and Twitter. So anytime I upload a video, I've got it set to automatically create a social media post for both of those. They won't talk to Facebook, probably because Google Plus and Facebook are competing with one another. And some things will only talk to Facebook on a personal account where I'm trying to do things through a page instead of through my personal Facebook. But there's no requirements. Probably a similar thing, you have to list what your channel content is and for what age group. My stuff is all, all ages. That was kind of a conscious intent, is I wanted everything to be family friendly. Because the ones my kids were watching, once I knew who these people were, I didn't have to worry about what they were watching. There's a lot of crap on the internet, if you haven't noticed that or not. And there's a lot of crap on YouTube. So there's things on there that I just would prefer my kids not hear or see.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure that anything that I put up there would be at PG at worst. Like I'll say crap. And that actually taught me to learn to have a filter, because I've never had a filter. I speak extremely freely all the time. Not everybody's used to that, but I learned the concept of a filter, which was probably a good thing in many cases. So
Also gives you a brand too, right?
yeah. So that was a conscious decision on my part, and other than that, you rate the category. You could be a blogger or a vlogger, or they actually have a gaming category, so mine listed as gaming. There are some pretty cool things built into YouTube, and the cool thing is because YouTube's owned by Google, it helps you be found in Google searches as well. So now when I'm trying to find a piece of cover art to make a thumbnail for a video, and I start Googling CoCo or Candy Color Computer, I see a lot of my videos come up almost on the first page. And so all this crap I'm throwing out there now is being pushed to the top of searches because it's the Google machine is getting oiled by feeding it, So if you're interested in trying to, be found and build something, using YouTube and Google Plus is an organic way to get your search engine optimizations boosted.
Now, so some of the stuff you do is live.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it I assume is pre-recorded.
Pre-recorded and just uploaded.
So when you do that, how much is recording and how much is editing?
When it's live, I don't edit. And that's the good news and the bad news, right? So the good news is number one, it's immediate for the people who are watching it, and then when it's done, it's a video that lives on forever. So when I don't have time to edit, I will do live. It allows me to be both lazy and get content up there as quickly as possible. And then when I do have time, I prefer to record and edit and have some creative control. The nice thing about the live, but anything I do live that's there, I can still download again. I can download it as an MP4 file, then I could re-edit it and load it back up. And that's one of the things we're letting these authors know too, that I can't control live, but let's say you say something and you realize maybe I shouldn't have said that or whatever, I can then take down the video. I can edit that out and put it back up, so it'd only be heard briefly and wouldn't live on forever. So we're giving them that safety net as well. But lately it's more live than pre-recorded, only because of my time. I actually took a second job to get the money to come here, so I'm teaching at night. I'm doing a full-time teaching gig, so I only have weekends now to do anything. So I can get more done live than I can recording, editing, and uploading. So.
Yeah, so we record on Google Hangouts. We do a hangout on air, which will we can talk like a video conference, and then at the end, you actually have to press a button that says, start, and then it'll record that, and when you stop, and it'll spin it off and send it to YouTube. But we do all ours privately is what we've done so far, including the roundtable stuff and the interview with Mr. Strong. We could do, I've considered, I don't know if we've talked about it, I've considered opening that up, so we could have, live before studio audience kind of experience, but haven't got there yet. Would that interest anyone? Anybody?
A live podcast?
So might would do that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Experiment anyway. Yeah, it's working.
I've found that Skype has better audio quality than
Yeah.
Google Hangouts does,
Really?
both audio
Yeah, we
and
found
video.
that.
We've done a lot of
We
experimenting with that.
tested that too. Google has nice controls though, because you
Yeah.
can select somebody to just make sure their display stays on the screen, even if somebody else is talking. Like it's got a lot of nice features Skype does not have. But
we've had kind of mixed experiences. Most of our Skype experience has been with the inside planning stuff, and that has been so terrible with dropouts.
The thing about any of this though is you really should be on a hard wire. Wireless is just, it's
yeah,
not ideal.
Wi-Fi's
for-
not reliable
Yeah.
for any of it.
So, if you're gonna be recording, especially, and even that for the video won't notice as much, but if you don't want the audio drops and all the gurgling sounds, a good hardwired connection, is crucial. We've tested both, and we found that Skype gets better audio quality. So, do you do Audacity or anything like that to record it digitally while you guys are talking? Because then you could have a,
No, I use Audacity to
To edit?
editing. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, because see, I don't have the file, right?
well, if
The
you,
file gets submitted
you're
on
on the
YouTube.
call
Yeah.
with him while you're talking to him.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so
You
what
could be
we
recording
do,
live with Audacity.
yeah, you could record separately.
Yeah.
So what we do, we spin it, we do the hangout on air, as it's called, and it records off to YouTube. We do that for the intro and the news and the feedback and the host talk sections. Usually the tech segments I'll record separately. Neil records his game stuff separately.
And then I'll use Audacity.
Yeah.
And then, I guess like when we did the Christmas episode, that was a separate recording session, so there's one more piece there. But so what we'll do is we'll record it and it's all private, and so then I'll spin off the MP4 recording, or well, usually it's just the audio, so the AAC or option. And then I'll make that available to Neil so he can do the editing. And so it takes him a week or something like that, once we've done the recording.
Get it all to, yeah.
It's time, editing is time consuming.
Dead space out.
I would
Adjust
imagine
levels.
It's probably gotta be harder audibly, because you have to literally listen to everything. Like, with video, I can kind of scrub through it and
Yeah.
see where I wanna get to.
Well, he also, when I record my tech segments, if you could hear them, sometimes it'll be, I'll be talking along, but, okay, Neil, you have to edit.
Yeah. That's your.
So when are we getting the blooper reel?
Yeah, exactly.
I know we threw a blooper reel on one of Steve's videos there, and
Yeah.
they've got a lot of response, a lot of
Yeah.
positive
Oh, we
feedback.
could do that.
Yeah, it
Yeah, I
might
need
be
to
fun.
start saving
I
that.
wouldn't do it all the time, but once in a while it's kind of fun.
Once in a while, we have to edit out some content that just doesn't need to be public.
Yeah.
Opinions?
Yeah, shouldn't make the cut.
Yeah.
Everybody's got one.
Right, exactly. So, questions, comments from the audience? Anybody got feedback or somebody like to see on either of the shows or anything like that? Mike looks like he's boiling over.
Question. I don't know if you've already covered it, but for someone looking to get back into the CoCo, it seems, I don't know if you've covered this, it seems a little daunting because there seems to be so many different storage options
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. I'm not sure if something can be covered about what the options are. Or
Yeah, well, I mean,
what would be appropriate for what situation?
that might be a good source of tech segment stuff, drive wire versus CoCo SDC versus, some of that kind of
Super
stuff.
ID and all the rest.
Well, Super ID, you can't buy those anymore because somebody's selfish with the production.
No offense.
Well, there's a sequel coming out, so.
Waiting for the sequel.
The other thing, if someone wanted to get back into color computer programming, but assembler was just too much for them, what would be the next best thing?
Yeah, Well, Steve was doing a Teach Yourself Basic, segment.
I've started doing a series on, I'm just going through the book, literally just reading the book, getting started with
No,
color
I
basic,
meant-
but other languages, not assembly, so.
Well, I meant for, if you want to do something graphical and thing, if you want to write a game and say assembler was too much for you, would you use C Basic, would you use a certain kind of fork compiler, things like that?
Well, I mean, yeah, we could do a discussion like that.
I think in episode 9, you mentioned, I forget the guy's name, but he's the Naked Assembler guy, and he did the Java Grinder, and
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, it
Michael
takes-
Kuhn. something.
Michael Kuhn's.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really messy.
Yeah.
Very,
You
very
should probably have you talked to Lee Patterson at all? Guy who
I
did
don't
bouncy
know
ball?
what that is.
Lee Patterson's
You need to
here.
make an introduction
Yeah.
to it.
You should talk to Lee Patterson.
Yeah, probably.
He's doing bouncy ball and he's writing it in C.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I know who that is.
Yeah. So he's writing it in C, and then he's getting a little bit of assistance on a few assembler routines just to speed up a few things. So
Okay.
I don't think there's I'm not a programmer, but I don't think there's a right answer. I think it's probably
Yeah,
a
it's
matter
more
of
personal
preference.
preference, yeah.
But there are C compilers, there are different assemblers,
compilers.
there's Basic 09, there is.
There's basic compilers.
There's color logo, there's DL logo, there are certainly options.
I mean, that's another question. Do you want to develop on the CoCo or within the emulated CoCo, or do you want to develop offline? Are you developing offline on Linux or versus Windows or Mac, which might be more like Linux, might be more like Windows? I'm not really sure how you're gonna do it.
Yeah, John Strong too, ask John what he's doing, because I think John Strong's from Strongware doing Bomb Squad. I think he's doing a lot of stuff on the PC, and then he transferred it to an emulator.
He's definitely.
He's got a whole tool set he's built that runs on
And
Windows.
it definitely is personal preference, like when we're talking to Nick Brantes, he prefers to do everything old school. He wants to do it on the CoCo like he did in the old days, because that's the nostalgia that he likes.
Except for the Amiga, where he does his.
Well, he always did that,
artwork
though.
on access,
He always
right,
did that,
yeah,
so-
Yeah, does all the graphics.
I think having an episode where you dig down into the details of some of the compilers or different
What-
development environments, I think would be cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, at least to let people know what's out there, and then let them make the decision based on the personal preferences of how they want it.
Exactly. Last night I went home and I looked online, and C Basic is pretty much the only compiler I could find for the CoCo 3 that generates assembler, or binaries. I couldn't find a fourth compiler that also was CoCo 3
Well,
compiled.
yeah, fourth compilers tend to generate, fourth byte code or whatever, not actual assembly code.
That's pretty quick.
You could ask Brett Gordon about that, he'd be the one that would know. There was somebody who posted a GitHub link recently with some kind of fourth compiler written in Go of all things. But I didn't make heads or tails of it, but Brett seemed to think that it was a noble effort, so.
I would not recommend Boise's special compiler, though, to write games.
Yeah.
It's a long story.
It'll mess with your brain, let's put it that way.
We'll have to do an interview segment with you on writing stuff and that. We might lose our general.
I don't even know how to write stuff in that language. I just know how to write the interpreter.
yeah, I'll just throw it out there for anybody who's here in this room right now. I would like to do an interview with anybody about anything. So anybody who wants to talk about anything with the CoCo, I don't care if you're quote unquote famous or not, because like I say, I can never get tired of hearing about this kind of stuff. So as we're walking around the room and I'm hearing people talk about their projects and their stories, I'm a junkie for this stuff. So anybody who wants to talk about this stuff at any given time, I'd love to hear from you. And if you want to put it on YouTube, we can do it on YouTube, and just reach out to me and let me know. And love to talk about anything that has to do with the CoCo.
Well, that's something, several podcasts that do listener interviews.
Yeah.
Right, where they interview their own listeners, which seems a little odd, but in some ways, but
Yeah.
it can be fun to listen to, and like I say, if you wanna be on air, if you wanna talk, if you wanna give feedback on your own terms, you can record your own thing. Mike recorded some stuff for us. It doesn't have to be praise, it doesn't have to be criticism either, you could just do your own, hey, I recorded this thing on Bouncy Ball or whatever, and
We'd like to hear that.
and but the interview question is something that Boise in particular keeps pressuring us for more interview stuff. We've done, we did the round table at Christmas, we've done John Strong, I'm not sure we've done any other interviews. I think we would like to, but we get overwhelmed with the news and everything else that we don't wanna do many 5-hour episodes. What's that?
How about Steve?
Steve Bjork. Yeah, I'm not sure if he'll talk to me since that,
That's
the
right.
the thread last year where I posted about who's my favorite programmer, but, he did have to approve my, permissions to edit the Glenside's, site stuff, so, I guess we're on okay terms, but,
He gave you a password?
yeah, he gave me a password.
But I know, like, as far as interviewing, like you said, fans and stuff too, like, one of the interviews we got coming lined up here is a person that had a CoCo back in the day, doesn't actively use it anymore, but he had some favorite games, and he was just a game player, he didn't do too much programming, and he's actually a professional podcaster and makes his living off podcasting. And he's agreed to be on just as a fan of the CoCo for playing games and
Yeah,
stuff.
we're gonna talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
And that's, I was trying to get Douglas Morgan, who actually is working locally here in Chicago these days, but he's way too busy to
If
get.
you could get Ed Klein, that'd be, it is Ed, right?
For?
The,
Ready Player One.
Ready Player One guy.
Oh, yeah, the
that'd
guy,
be cool.
Yeah.
has Dagger's references.
Yeah.
I still haven't read the book yet, I haven't, I
Oh,
bought it,
you ought
I
to.
gotta read it, yeah. One thing I noticed on the podcast, especially because I went back and started listening on Zero, you got a lot more sound bites than the earlier ones. There's less transitional clips now, probably because there's more content.
Yeah.
But I like hearing the little things, the little Donkey Kong sounds and the commercials and all that stuff, so I stole that idea from you guys. I'm sure that's a common thing, podcasts are using the old retro commercials and everything,
Oh,
so.
If you have sources for any other Radio Shack or CoCo commercials that aren't already popping up on the, podcast, send them to us,
Yeah.
cause we'd like to have more.
Absolutely.
We had one from Quebec here recently.
And the French one?
Yeah.
Go for it. I don't think.
Yeah. CoCo do, something like that.
Yeah.
Those are the only two words I understood, were Coco and do.
But yeah, but it's,
Yeah.
so anyway, the podcast is, the idea was to bring more people here to promote this event.
I think
But
we
it-
succeeded.
I think we have, but it's also to build, the whole thing is about building the community. So it means it's our podcast, it's your podcast. We want it to be something that you enjoy, and we want you to have input to it if you want to participate. We'd love to hear from you, and whether it's
And
about.
spread the word too, for people that aren't, as active as this, but still have an
Yeah.
interest to it. Even if they don't have one anymore, if they just wanna
Whether it's
revisit
about,
their past.
whether it's about your projects, or about your perceptions of things, or your favorite game, or whatever, we'd like to hear about it. I think I checked, the episode 11 has like 500 downloads already
That's great.
for like a week ago. Pretty impressive. Randy Kindig brags about 1,000 downloads for his podcast, so we want to hit that.
What is the potential, how do people make money doing podcasts? I know you're not in it for the money, but how do you monetize that?
I don't know how you
Usually
would
advertising.
directly, I mean, I guess you could have paid advertisements or something.
That's usually how, like, the professional podcasts, like I've been in Twit and a few others, I mean, it's a $4 million a year empire doing podcasts, and it's all based on advertising revenue.
Yeah, so
Where
maybe
does
we
the
could.
advertising go when you're listening to the podcast? Or do they like?
They actually have a
commercials
commercial embedded
play
into the
throughout,
podcast.
okay.
We could get
Actually, in
Marlette,
Twit's case, they actually have the host read the commercials out, so.
Okay.
we could have Marlette pay
Like a
to
radio.
endorse his newest creations.
Mark needs is more exposure.
Yeah, so, I don't know.
I mean, in our case, for the interviews, one of the things we tell our interviewers if they're actually producing stuff
We'll be happy to
is, yeah,
plug
like,
something.
we'll let you plug for free, we're not gonna charge you advertising, so.
No.
You can tell about upcoming projects, give details, forward to the website, whatever you wanna do, so.
I also have a PayPal account if anyone would like to submit a contribution, be happy to take it.
The greatest nation in the world is donation.
That's right. Well, let's see. Well, actually, we're probably a little over time now, so
Okay.
probably should wrap it up. Has anybody got any comments or questions they'd like to finish up with?
Keep up the great work.
That's right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, who's next? Oh, is it Logic All time?
FPGA?
Oh, that's right. Is it Gary? Is it your turn? All right, Gary, come on.
I don't see the camera rolling. Let's keep on recording. Oh, this pause.